I want to welcome to the program, listen, a guy that we hold in the highest esteem. He's sort of the godfather of oversight and absolutely irreplaceable Senator Grassley of Iowa. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, and I thank you, Josh, for having me. And it's great to be back with the fellas on the program.
Well, actually, it's great to have you. The reason we wanted to talk to you so urgently this week is because you have some breaking news. And you sent a letter this week to FBI Director Wray and Attorney General Garland regarding information and how they processed Hunter Biden information.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, it also attacks a problem that's quite a little bit bigger than even Hunter Biden. So let me separate what started August 2019 when I started investigating Hunter Biden, and still doing that. But we've also unleashed a lot of things that we have bank documents that prove that what was in the laptop is in fact. The laptop is not Russian disinformation. Now, I don't have to prove that to anybody today, but it took us 2 years to prove that. So now, getting back to your question, what we did is we sent letters to the FBI based upon information that we have gotten from very credible whistleblowers, and that's a plural word because we got multiple sources of this information. That show that, and I'll give you two examples that show that people making decisions whether investigations should be opened or whether they should be closed have politics mixed up with it. And of course, the FBI ought to be above politics. People ought to have credibility with the with the FBI, and public confidence is very important. So what I'm saying is detracts from public confidence because we have this guy named Thibault who in the case of opening up a case against Trump said basically it was based upon fuzzy newspaper reports from liberal reporting that this investigation should go ahead. Then he had all sorts of concrete information that Hunter Biden had done wrong and that they were starting an investigation, and he put a stop to that investigation. Wow. So we want to know what concrete steps the FBI director Wray is going to take to make sure this stuff stops. Now, I do want to compliment Wray that when I first pointed out to him that Thibault was involved in this sort of stuff, particularly when we got notification that Thibault had been using social media for very partisan attacks on certain people, and I pointed that out to Wray. Wray moved him out of this decision-making process. So I hope that Wray will follow up just as strongly with these accusations that I'm giving to him right now.
Yeah.
But this is a part of the culture of the FBI and maybe even the Justice Department.
Well, that's what's so concerning about this, because as you mentioned off the top, I don't think we ever would have gotten to the bottom of whether or not we're dealing with Russian disinformation or Hunter's laptop being authentic without the work you'd done previously in previous years to actually uncover the fact that there was a long paper trail, financial and otherwise, that validated the contents of the laptop and essentially that it was in fact his laptop, because at the time everyone said that it was Russian disinformation, and 15, 20 former intel agencies all said that, and it turns out that was all nonsense. But now I think what you're dealing with, as you said, is something much more significant in that it's a culture within the Department of Justice, within the FBI, that essentially investigates, or I think what you're saying is begins investigations based what looks to be on partisan issues, right?
And stops investigations based on partisan issues.
So the way that they handled And you have whistleblowers that have talked to you apparently about this, but the way that they handled the information about Hunter Biden's laptop was to just downplay it and not open an investigation about the relevant pieces of it? Absolutely.
And as I'm saying, this comes from credible whistleblowers, not just one whistleblower.
That is a why. I can't think of anything more dangerous in this country than those who are entrusted with investigating crimes, prosecuting them entirely on a partisan basis.
I think we'll soon have FBI Director Wray before the Judiciary Committee, and we're going to pursue this line of questioning with him, and we expect him to say flat out that he's going to do certain things to make sure this doesn't happen again. He's got to take these concrete steps to reestablish the credibility of the FBI.
Does it bother you at all to know that, Wray in this case, but it's gone, much further afield within the Department of Justice itself, that you're consistently having to point these things out? And, as you said, he took action with this particular agent that you had in mind, but like none of that ever would have come up. Do they have no process at all to ensure the integrity of their own investigations?
Of course, that scares me, and of course, people that work for the FBI, the prestige that the FBI used to have and ought to reestablish once again, that people work for it, wouldn't be so proud of who they're working for that they would let this stuff interfere with the work of the FBI or the public's confidence in the FBI.
You've been doing this a long time. Have you ever seen this situation present itself with the FBI or the Department of Justice? It seems like in recent years, just in the last 4 years or so, it's gone from an institution that has had, a lot of public credibility to multiple incidences over a period of time of either partisan prosecutions, partisan investigations, or just this sort of veneer of partisanship one way or another over everything they do.
And they should be very aware of how J. Edgar Hoover, with investigating people that worked for Johnson and following Martin Luther King around and all that, how that destroyed the credibility of the FBI in the 1950s and 60s. And then I think it was reestablished, but now this detracts from the people that worked to overcome J. Edgar Hoover's faults.
Do you find that any of your Democratic colleagues who are now in the majority, do they share any of your concerns, or they just sort of dismiss all this?
I wouldn't want to say they dismiss it, but they don't ever back me up on it. They don't ever compliment me for it, even quietly. I don't expect them to say a lot of things publicly because this is their administration. But I think that with what I've established as a reputation over 40 years of oversight work in the United States Senate, that I would have credibility and that they would at least not pull some of the stunts that they did in 19 and 20 to discredit everything that I was doing. And it took another year or so before even the New York Times and the Washington Post had to admit that I wasn't spreading Russian disinformation.
It's wild, right? I'm trying to picture a scenario in my head where the roles are reversed and there's a Republican administration that is essentially opening investigations into political opponents and closing them into their own out in the open. It would be the front page of every newspaper.
Yeah. And, that's another thing. I think my reputation goes to equal application of oversight work, to whether you have a Republican president or Democrat president.
No question.
This started with me with finding a lot of investigations in the Defense Department, even during the Reagan administration.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. What is so impressive about your body of work on oversight, both in the government and in terms of private enterprise out there, is that it's about a fact-finding mission. And over the years, you can look, there are no partisanship attributions that you can make to your work. It basically is where the facts fall, which is why I asked the question about whether or not you have any Democratic partners in this stuff, because it seems to me when your Democratic colleagues have brought things to your attention that warrant investigations, you're the first one through the door.
Absolutely. And when we have a Republican president, I have their support. I think the best way to say this is that I use Iowa common sense as I approach the whole business of congressional oversight. It's a constitutional responsibility, and I don't care whether we have a Republican president or Democrat president. My goal is to follow the facts where they lead you, follow the money where it leads you, and just think what we did in the case of Hunter Biden. We followed the money where it led us.
So where do you think? So you mentioned that the next step in this is probably having Ray before the committee, where you have to ask these questions clearly. Where do you anticipate this goes from here?
Well, I hope that my reputation and some of the things that FBI director already did in reassigning Tebow knows that they have a problem and that they will cooperate with me and do even a lot of things that need to be done that maybe I wouldn't even know about yet. But we're going to continue until we get the answers of it. And I would hope that it continues well into next year. And if I'm reelected, it's going to continue into next year. And the American people will want heads to roll if you really going to make a part, if you're going to make a point in this whole operation. Heads have to roll.
That's 100% right. God made a Grassley for all the right reasons, and we got to have you right exactly where you are for the foreseeable future to get any kind of accountability for any of this. I know you're running for re-election. We got to do everything in our part, both in all the listeners, the minions, and us as a show to make sure that you can keep doing your work. Senator Grassley, where can our listeners keep up with you and make sure that we're doing everything we can do to help you?
There's 2 points I'll make for you. One at Grassley Works, and the other one, GrassleyWorks.com. And I hope they go there frequently. And I don't know whether we ask on those sites specific things to do, but they can help us. But most importantly, spread the word, particularly people that use social media. And that's usually people that are under 35 years of age. They ought to use their social media to spread the good work that Senator Grassley is doing, making government transparent, because when government's transparent, you have accountability, and that's what our democracy is all about, accountability.
Well, we're going to do our very best to provide you with that megaphone, Senator, because we can't thank you enough for all the good work that you're doing. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks so much for sharing all this information.
And God bless you, and thank you for helping me.